On today's episode, we're going to be talking about what to do when you feel like you've lost all hope on Soul Zero 2. And welcome to Soul Zero 2. This is the podcast that is putting the oxygen back into the Christian life one soul at a time. And try saying that 5 times, right? So what I want to talk to you today is simply this. Feeling hopeless? Do this one thing. And the reason why I want to share this is because there's been so much hopelessness these past couple of years. And I know we always go through seasons, but it's been over the top with COVID and the politics of it and people losing jobs and supply issues, and just everything is like 3 notches below what we're used to. And so we can easily become discouraged, just, the housing crisis and the economy, the gas price, everything. And personal careers have been lost during this season, and many people have really struggled. So what I want to talk to you today is simply about the idea that hope is a tricky thing. And it's so tricky that if we don't get it right, we're going to end up hopeless. And let me put it this way, that if my hope is only this random thing of saying, well, I hope life gets better, then what will happen is it's the equivalent of me saying, well, if the wind currents change, then maybe my circumstances will change. And we know how random the wind can be. It can change on a dime. So our hope has to be more substantial than just this random kind of general shotgun kind of thing in all directions, hoping that something hits. And there's a saying by John Bunyan, who said this. He said, "As your faith is, such your hope will be. Hope is never ill when faith is well, nor strong if faith is weak, or if faith be weak." And that's John Bunyan. And I just love the fact that he was able to just compress that into this beautiful thought, that he was telling us what to reach for there, and he was telling us what to look for there. And as we look at this idea of hope, we have to understand that in the scriptures there's always this tension between faith and hope, and love for that matter. But let me give you the scripture, or rather this little snippet I want to give you here. But here's what we do if we don't know what to do about hope. Stop focusing on hope and start focusing on believing God. What do I mean by that? Sometimes we can become obsessed with just hoping that things will get better, hoping that my life will turn, hoping that I'll get a better job, or that finances will come and provision will come and all these things. And we're so focused on hope that we forget about the object of that hope, because hope needs an object. Hope can't be random. It can't just be this general thing. And this is why in the book of Hebrews, we find this beautiful scripture here that says, "Let us lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run the race, or rather run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith." And so notice that he is the object of our faith. He's the object of our hope. And sometimes if we only focus on hope, what happens when we only focus on hope? Well, this happens. We are focused on chance and not God. What do I mean by that? I mean that we had this randomized thought, and we're waiting for an accidental shift in our situation, and not necessarily God. We're not necessarily waiting on God. The scriptures say, "They that wait upon the Lord." There's a powerful metaphor there. The inference is kind of like a waiter waiting on tables, or a servant waiting on his master. That we're not just waiting randomly, like for the bus where we have our arms crossed and we're just kind of reading our Kindle, but we're waiting on a person to act. That is the true hope. And so that's why I didn't say focus on faith, but focus on believing God, because that comes to another challenge that we can have in our walk. But when we focus on this chance type hope, we're not inviting God's process in our situation. We're not welcoming his sovereign hand. And sometimes, people think that, well, faith puts me in control of my life and I could just kind of use my faith to steer wherever my life goes. And that's an incorrect view of faith. Faith partners with God in process to allow his sovereign will to happen in my life. And so what happens when we focus only on faith? What happens when we focus only on faith, right? And that's a good question, because if we focus only on faith, and let me give you a scripture here, that because this scripture has been used so much in the past by people that maybe put all of the emphasis only on their faith, and that is Habakkuk 2:4. Look at the proud; their spirit is not right in them, but the righteous live by their faith. And they put the emphasis on their faith. But yet Paul puts it this way, as it is written, and he quotes that scripture, the one who is righteous will live by faith. Notice he didn't say their faith, but by faith, meaning that yes, there was a responsibility to believe, but it's not all on me. It's not all based on the quality of my faith. Because how many times have we failed to believe because of human weakness, because we're struggling so much? And the last thing we need someone to tell us is just believe God, because we're so exhausted maybe, or we're tired, or we're angry, or, discouraged. And many have taken this scripture to believe that the object is my faith, when in reality, the object is God, my faith in God. My faith is not the object. God is the object. He's the focus of my faith, right? So hope has to be based on something. And that something is God. But what happens when I only focus on my faith? And this is the first one. It becomes a performance technical thing. In other words, let me go back here. But in other words, it becomes this pass or fail thing that I'm doing just, because it's based on the way I formulate my prayers, or the way I declare the word, or whatever phrase I use to exercise faith, I did it wrong, and it becomes this. Well, I got it wrong, and that's it. And we find a man praying to Jesus, saying, "Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief." And there's something about that speaks of the human experience, that no matter how much faith we think we have, we struggle. And so we find that as we talk about this, another thing happens when faith is my only focus. In other words, my faith. And this is what happens. We strive with never being enough. And let me go back here, but let me just say that if we don't receive healing or a miracle or whatever we wanted, then we failed. We're not enough. My faith wasn't enough to get what I wanted. Yet I had a friend who many, many years ago, his son was very, very sick, and he fasted 21 days for him and really struggled and just believed God, declared the word, stood by night in prayer over his son. And he actually encouraged other people, saying, I'm holding on to God, and God's going to break through. And he did everything right. I mean, this guy really is a man of faith. His son dies. So does that mean that his faith wasn't enough? And absolutely not. There has to be more to this story that we don't always understand. But let me just say this, that sometimes in a world filled with spiritual evil, sometimes the enemy does win the battles. But let me also say this, that God is also working. He is faithful to keep us. But another thing happens when we focus only on faith, and that is this. It places all of the weight on you and on your faith and not on God. And that's a heavy duty thought when you think about it. When it's all on me, when everything I do is absolutely all on me. And there are many scriptures, however, that speak about waiting on God and waiting for him. And that tells me one thing, that the object is never my faith as much as my faith in him. He's the object. He's the one that's going to bring it through. I have to focus on his character, not just on the quality of my faith. All I got to do is believe and say, Lord, I'm struggling, but I'm going to believe you. That's it. So let's not complicate it, right? But here's a question that I want to ask. Here's a what if question, right? What if we combined both hope with faith? And instead of just hoping, right, begin believing God and believing what he's going to do. And I love the way 1 Peter 1:21 puts it. Through him, you have come to trust in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are set on God. I'll say it again, so that your faith and hope are set on God. Do you see that? That faith and hope need an object, and that object is God. It's all about him. It's all about him bringing us through. And hence, we have to focus on him, not on the quality of my hope or the quality of my faith. And so Hebrews has another one that I want to give you that is just beautiful. In Hebrews 10:23, where it says, let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who has promised is faithful. Again, the onus is on God here. The responsibility is on God. My responsibility is just to believe, just to hold on to him, and to believe in his character, to believe that he will break through for us. So if you like this podcast, please leave a like, and remember to find us on YouTube, on Soul02. We're on Buzzsprout audio, Buzzsprout podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher. We're on Google, or wherever you find your podcasts. So till next time, thanks so much for watching and being with us. God bless you.